10 seconds.
Hi, my name is Jonah Jamroz. I play for the professional paintball team Los Angeles Infamous, and you're listening to the XBall podcast.
Game on.
So starting off with number one, where do you live and what's something cool about it for you? I currently live in St. Louis, Missouri right now. I'm born and raised in Neenah, Wisconsin, but I moved out here about 4.5 years ago for a job working at First Form. It's a fitness nutrition company based out of St. Louis or Fenton, Missouri. And, thinking about it, it's kind of like I went to college in Milwaukee, and, I really liked Milwaukee. It was a small city, a lot of things to do, a lot of really good communities in there. I think something that was a cool selling point about it too was the fact that, you had a body of water, so you had like a beach that you could actually go to. So kind of had, something cool about that. But, when I moved to St. Louis, I realized that, Milwaukee and St. Louis were relatively similar in the size and kind of like, being able to go do things and, find cool restaurants and, a lot of really cool communities and stuff. It was missing a beach, but, there's still a lot of really fun things to do around the city. And I want to say that probably my favorite thing about the city, or something that's pretty cool about it for me, is the fact that there are so many little cool things that you can do for free around the city and get to experience. Like, you can walk around the Arch grounds. That's a really cool attraction. The St. Louis Zoo is actually one of the best zoos in the country, and it's completely free to go and check out. And then you've got like the City Museum and the Science Museum, and there's a ton of like little things like that you can go around and check out for free in the city. And, when I first moved here, I didn't have any friends, when I moved for the job. So, I kind of went to my apartment and then went to and from work. And that was pretty much all I did, for a couple of years up until I started, making friends and, meeting people. And, at first I thought the city was relatively boring. Like there wasn't much to do. But then, once I met my girlfriend, Shelby, she really kind of exposed the, all that there is to do in St. Louis. And I've really kind of come to grow into the city, and I really enjoy St. Louis as a whole, and I just think there's a lot of cool things to do.
Hey Jonah, this is Collin Cherry from the farm in Tennessee. My question for you today was, who is a player that influenced you coming up in paintball? Whether it be their play style or the style of gear that they wore, just somebody that really influenced you in the game.
It's pretty interesting. I had to take a little bit of time to reflect and think about that one for a second. And, kind of growing up, I would always watch these Dirter videos or Dirter Headshot or like, some of these documentaries that came out or like the Reckoning series. They were all really cool, documentaries that really kind of shaped my perspective of professional paintball. And it's like something that, I don't see a ton of, right now currently in the industry. And I kind of wish that there was more of that. And that's kind of a second question or something that, I should touch on later. But, circling back to that, I want to say like Damian Ryan was a player that I really looked up to, as I was kind of coming up, in paintball. Cody Makowski was always a really big person that I looked up to as well. Thomas Taylor. And then Marcelo Margot was another big influence as I was aspiring, to come up the divisions. I would say Marcelo and Cody Makowski, as well as, John Kurzawa was always a big influence as well. But I would say specifically Cody Makowski and Marcelo were both really big key figures in my growth as a player. And as I was kind of coming up in the divisions, they were both really good mentors. And when I look back, I used to go to like paintball clinics with, Marcelo Margot. Like he came out to a local field called Adventure Valley. No, it's not Adventure Valley. It's Outdoor Adventures over back in Wisconsin. And he would host these clinics at that field. And, I would go there, practice. And that was kind of like one of my first experiences with like a high level, like professional player. And, I learned a lot from those clinics. And then when I moved to Milwaukee for college, Cody Makowski really took me under his wing. And the knowledge that he gave me and the reps that he gave me and really taking that time, that time to give me like a personal touch of like, the things that he had learned, critiquing, giving his time, all of that was just super invaluable. And I can't thank him enough for taking the time to take time out of his practice day or even coming out on the weekdays. He was a big advocate for taking time out of his normal week schedule to come work one-on-one with me, whether that's one-on-ones or, snap shooting drills and, things like along those lines. And I probably wouldn't be where I am right now if I didn't have that experience with Cody. And I'm very thankful for that opportunity because I know not everybody gets a chance to do that. But if you have any sort of local talent, anybody that's better than you will work. But if you have access to a high level player, really take the time to learn. Well, first of all, when they're teaching you, don't just a lot of people will just listen to what they have to say and then either try to respond or, it'll go in one ear and out the other. But, it's a different thing to actually take the knowledge that somebody is trying to give you and understand it, A, and then B, apply it and actually be thinking about the knowledge that's given to you and applying it in like your everyday practice. So, if he's telling you about, how to snap shoot a specific way, or he's critiquing you on your form or your stance or what you're doing in a game or practice or whatever it is, or a drill, take that feedback, apply it, and then recognize it when you're playing or practicing and actually improve on it. Most people will take advice or they'll search for all this advice, they'll be given the advice and then they won't do anything with it. And it's a waste of your time. It's a waste of my time. It's a waste of anybody who's involved. So I think that's a bigger critique on, information being shared. But I was really lucky and blessed to have, a couple of key figures like that, really take the time to, mentor me and coach me. And, obviously I've been around with a couple of different programs, and Vintage was another program that I had the pleasure of, being taught or mentored by Aaron Tholey. And, he was similar to Cody in the sense that he would, when you were there at practice, he was there to help you. And he just had a really good approach to the game. And, as you continue to play at these different places and you hear the perspective of these different coaches, they might have a different style of, how they play the game or a different style of how they approach the game. And you really want to take the time to understand that perspective, hear that perspective, and see what you can use from that perspective in your play style. So those were really the big people that, kind of made a difference in my paintball career. And I'm, again, super invaluable experiences. And I wouldn't be where I am right now without the help of those guys. And I still have a long way to go. And next up, number 3, why has Infamous struggled to reach the top in recent events? Some of it's a complex answer, some of it's not. I think some of it has to do with everybody being bought into the same mission. I think that, on some teams it's easy to get in a habit of doing your own thing or, either getting complacent or, maybe just showing up to practice, the event practices and the event and just going into it like that without having any kind of time spent drilling beforehand or really investing in, some people might be diving more into, drills versus, some people might not be spending time doing drills and they might be doing more fitness-based activities, or some cases it's neither. I think some of it is a combination of everybody being bought into the same mission and the same goal and operating as a team and as a unit versus, individual. I think that's probably a bigger scenario. I think another part of it is, getting used to the group of guys that is on the team. So we've obviously added a couple of new players. We've lost players over the last couple of seasons. And I think you see the dynamic of the team, somewhat morphing and changing over time. And it's tough to create that cohesiveness and that group mentality, when you're adding and removing players consistently. I would say relatively consistently. But part of me also believes though that some of the players need to buy in, or it feels like, some aren't as bought in as others. And I think we're collectively fixing that, over the course of this season. But I think that's at least what I would say is the the struggle for us to reach the top in the most recent events. And I think we've been trying to fix that, with other kind of things that we do internally as a group. We've been trying to do more team-based activities outside of paintball, as well as, sticking together as a unit, when we are together, and doing more things together when we can. And also finding time to practice off weekends together as a unit, I think has been paying dividends in at least our most recent practice. I've felt like we've played more as a team than we have in the past. And so I think that if we can continue to focus more on a single goal and aspiration as a unit, like everybody operating towards the same goal, I think that that's going to be a difference maker in us performing at these events. I really like this next question.
What does discipline mean to you in pro paintball?
I think discipline to me is, not changing what it took to get to the position that you are in right now. And I think I see a lot of that in, it could be pro, it could be in the pro division, it could be in semi-pro, maybe even, slightly in Division 2 as well. But, you see these players that put in a lot of time, a lot of hard work, a lot of reps, a lot of effort to get to a specific position, whether that's, Division 2, semi-pro, or pro, like I said. And once they reach that point, they feel like now you don't have to work as hard, or now you don't have to, put in the same amount of time because you're just naturally talented, or you've got the skill. So now you don't have to keep working on that. And I feel like discipline as a player, as an individual, you can't stop doing the things that it took for you to get to your current position. It's almost like a bell curve. If you look at, as it's sloping up towards the top, you're putting in, and you start looking at little notches on your way up to that top point. You're starting to get these notches by, that extra drill night during the week, taking time during the week to work on your fitness, taking the time to watch matches and analyze and self-critique. You're doing all of these little things and staying consistent with it. And you're starting to reap the success that you had put in, over a period of time. And most people get complacent at that point once they start to see the successes of the hard work that they've put in. And once you get to that top of the bell curve, you can either go down or you can continue to go up if you were to stay consistent with, what it took to get you to that point. And I just see a lot of players will, like, going back to my last question, will, they've been, you could have been in the league for quite some time, and you start to feel like, well, maybe I don't have to drill as much because I already have the talent, right now to get by, or, to do well. But if you want to be great, or you want to be better than your current self and be the best version of yourself, you cannot stop doing the things that it took to get you to this point. And it's important for people to not forget about that as they're coming up on this journey. And discipline is all about doing the things that you don't want to do, even when you're like, it's doing the things that you don't want to do, even though you don't want to do them. It's continuing to do those things, even though they might feel mundane, even though they might feel boring, even though you might not even be passionate about it. You still have to get up and do the thing because that's what you told yourself you're going to do. And kind of going off of that point too, I posted this on my Instagram story probably a couple weeks ago, but it's been a thought on my mind, and I had some feedback on it as well. But you start to think about these promises that you make to other people, whether that's like, let's say a friend is waking up, or like a friend has to go to the airport early in the morning, and so you make the promise to him, say like, hey, I'm going to pick you up in the morning. It could be like a 5 a.m. flight, so you got to wake up at 3 a.m., pick him up, whatever. So you wake up, you pick him up, and then you go home. Now, where is that same kind of promise kept to yourself when you wake up in the morning? It might not even be 3 a.m. It might be like 6 a.m., 7 a.m. for some people. You wake up, you hear that alarm clock, you promise yourself that you're going to get in shape, or that you want to go to the gym, or start taking your fitness seriously. You wake up, you hear that alarm, and you're like, all right, well, I'm going to go back to sleep. And you hit the snooze. We're so quick to keep the promises to other people and not the promises that we make to ourselves. And you just see that self-confidence go down over a period of time because you're not keeping the promises that you had to yourself. And I think that's that's a bigger problem than just paintball, but it can bleed into paintball based on your mentality. But like, waking up, like promising other people that you're going to, go to practice and keeping that promise, or telling yourself that, hey, I'm going to go drill on Saturday and I'm going to be the first one at the field. Like keeping that promise to yourself and actually executing on that and developing the confidence in yourself because you've been keeping your promises to yourself. I think that that's an important thing for people to do. And it just kind of goes back to discipline. And I think people need to continue to hold the promises that they give to other people. But more importantly, you should keep the promises that you're telling yourself, and you should keep those promises.
All right, next up, number 5, what's your personal favorite drill to practice?
It's a little bit tough to talk about over audio with no visual representation, but I mean, just breaking it down most simply, like I'm a rep guy. Like I like the standard free throw for basketball, like, the penalty kick for soccer. I mean, it doesn't get as more basic than snap shooting for paintball. I'll set up a cone in a various multitude of spots. And, sometimes I'll start in a Mayan temple, or sometimes I'll start in a small temple, or, I'll go in a snake knuckle or something like that. And I'll just try to do 3 consistent 1-ball snaps into the cone, switch hands, do three 1-ball snaps on my other hand to a cone, and vice versa, continuing to switch, really working on A, consistently hitting the mark, B, working on my first ball on the switch over. And I just think as a paintball player, one of the most fundamental things that you can work on is your snap shooting or your snapshot. And you see players like Malloy, or, Cody's got a wicked 1-ball, Marcelo's got a wicked 1-ball. Like, these are all players that really worked hard to achieve that. And it really just doesn't get simpler or more fundamental than that. And I'd say that's probably my personal favorite drill to practice.
Next, number 6, what kind of situations during a match can throw you off or make you frustrated, either on or off the field?
There's really probably 2 things or 2 situations that can really make me frustrated. And that has to do with gun problems or like paint problems. And that could be like, me choosing to do like a hard dive on the ground and then breaking the paint in my loader, or filling a broken pod, or, something along those lines is so frustrating as a player and demoralizing as a player, especially when you get into a key spot on the field. You look down the field, you see the whole backside or the whole pack or whatever, you name it, and not being able to land the shot that you could hit because of a situation like that, whether that's, caused by me or, some other variable. It's simply, that's one of the biggest things that is extremely annoying to me. Another scenario could be, this actually happened a couple events ago, I think in Chicago. The first point is Sunday, and, we're playing Paintball Fit as a rematch because we played them in the prelims. The very first point, I go to my primary spot. I dive in, no paint, like nobody shot at me off the break. I dive into my spot. I start playing, and the ref runs over. He's like, "Player, you're hit." Pulls me out, throws a minor, and I'm like, like what just happened? I get into the pits. I have no broken paint. I was not hit. I pull out my pod, and there's broken paint in my pod, and some of it can be down to the reffing in terms of like, they do, like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this to bash the reffing, because the reffing has been good. I like the refs, great people, hardworking people. They have to stay outside in that sun, listening to everybody bitch and moan about like different kind of things. But I mean, objectively, like, there's no way around it. That's probably one of the most frustrating or demoralizing things that you can deal with as a player. And like, it's frustrating, it's stuff that's sometimes in your control, sometimes not. But, that's just what I would have to say, when it comes to things that are frustrating during a match.
And moving into the next one, number 7, are there any specific conversations or thoughts you personally share with your coach or teammate after each point or before a game, but beyond the usual game plans, or any actions that help strengthen team cohesion?
I think at least something that we do, I'm sure other professional teams do this as well, but there's different levels of communication and feedback that you can give as a player to your coach and other players on your line about what just happened during the point. And, things like, how were they positioned on the box? Was this guy pitted or not? Were they baited, like the different tendencies that the other front player is giving you or another player on the field? Like those are probably some of the things that we really like to go over. When I'm talking to my other teammates or my coach, I'll be like, okay, well, I got shot going to this position because they were pitted doing this, or they were, the shot was coming in from this player off the break and he was pitted doing this, or, this front player likes to make this move, or this is typically his route going, to this spot, or like game plan wise before, we play a match, we'll typically watch the previous matches and then, analyze and, break down and be like, okay, well, this front player will typically do this, or this two behind him will typically do that. And, while I can't give like any hyper specific examples, those are just some generalities as to, the kind of comments and the feedback that, I give to my other like line mates and my line mates give to me, as well as, stuff that I tell my coach.
Number 8, favorite teams to play against in the league.
This next question is kind of a tough one. I really enjoy playing against every team in the league. There's not really like any sort of negative feeling towards playing any sort of team. I would say like, at least in previous seasons, like I really wanted to play against Dynasty and beat that team specifically. Whether that's because like we just have like a good competitive rivalry between Infamous and Dynasty, like the history of the two teams and the legacy between the two teams, like that's always a really fun match that I look forward to. And, I really looked forward to, in previous seasons, especially with, like you always want to beat like the winning team or the team that's number one in the division. And like they had a really good run. And that was probably the team that I really looked forward to playing against. I would say, there's other like really hard teams that I enjoy playing against. Like I really enjoy playing against the Russians because they give a really good competitive look at how the field is playing, and you're playing against the best in the league by far. And I would have to say that that's probably another team that I enjoy playing against or look forward to playing against. Otherwise, I don't think that I don't really have any sort of feelings towards playing teams. Most of the time, like it's just another team,
Number 9, when a ref makes a really bad call against you and you're close to losing it, how do you handle it? Do you argue in the heat of the moment, or do you let it go and focus on getting ready for the next point?
I think honestly, this is a good perspective to have just in life or, your day to day. And in that exact scenario, that I was talking about previously where, I had broken paint in my pod, got the minor, and that happened. Initially, you're met with the wave of anger, frustration, and you really want to let the ref hear it. But you have to, unless there's something that you can actually do to make a change, like obviously in that scenario, there's the penalty is always already thrown. There's nothing I can do, and I just have to live with that. And in some other scenarios, you can go, obviously you can go to the ref and see if like they can reverse a call or whatever. But for the most part, when a ref makes a really bad call against me or something, and I'm, about to lose it, I have to think to myself, is there actually anything that can change? Like, is this actually something that can be reversed, or is there anything that can actually be done about it right now, right here? And if the answer is no, then all I can do is let them know of the error and explain to them why it was bad or poor, and then hope that they improve it in the future. I mean, like, you can think about this in life too. It's like if there's nothing you can do to change the result of the action that just happened, you have to address it, understand why it happened, and then move on. I mean, if there's nothing that you can change about it, like, you have to do those things. And there's nothing really that you can do to change it when there's nothing to be changed, if that makes sense. Like, for example, there's no use in complaining and arguing and bitching and moaning to the gate attendant at, like, when you're at an airport, when they tell you that, like, when there's literally nothing that they can do. The flight's been canceled, you've already been rebooked, and there's nothing else that you can do. You just complaining, venting, and projecting onto this poor gate attendant is not going to change the fact that the flight was canceled. You know what I mean? So instead of continuing to let that anger and frustration out, learn to deal with it, accept it, feel it, and then move on and figure out, okay, how do I pivot? How do I change? How do I adapt? And this is my new circumstance. So what do I do now? And I think more people need to have that kind of mentality or that mindset. And that's really how I deal with, a ref making a bad call against me or my team.
So jumping into number 10, if you had to pick 4 players for an all-star lineup, who would you choose? And then with the caveats being with no 2 players from the same team and none from your current team.
I would probably pick Malloy, O'Mara, Chavez, and probably Blake Yarber. That would probably be the 4 that I would pick. And then I would choose CJ Cantor for the bench.
All right, and getting into number 11, how often do you fly to different places in the U.S. for paintball-related practices or tournaments?
So I'm kind of lucky with this next one. The field, at least that, we have players that pretty much most of Infamous is spread all across the country, but I would say like a good majority of them are in the Midwest. So I at least get to drive, or at least the distance is pretty close that I can drive to. Like Blast Camp is kind of where like we'll collectively go to. It's at least a centralized spot where most of us can come together and practice. But I would say I don't typically fly to a ton of places. So I would say, for this one, I really just fly to the practices before the events and typically just stay the week, and then play the event. So like we'll practice, if it's in Texas, we'll practice in Texas and then drive to the event and then stay at the event and then fly back. So I really don't fly to a ton of different places for paintball related practices or tournaments.
Number 12, most epic music concert you've been to.
Now this next one, I'm a little biased. I'll give you 2 answers, but I gotta say, First Form's Summer Smash is the most insane like festival, event, concert thing, that we host. I mean, it's just insane. We've had people like Chainsmokers, Rick Ross, who else? I mean, there's some big names that we've had. Pitbull has come. We've had Nelly. We've had a couple of like very large artists come by and perform, and like 2 friends came too. They were really good as well. So I would say the First Form Summer Smash is a really good concert that I've been to, as well as like it's just a fitness festival. It's an event. If you like fitness, if you like people, if you like the brand, it's a really good event to come check out and meet people one-on-one. Really cool event. I've talked about it in a couple of other podcasts. If you want to learn more, check out First Form and you can check it out there. 2 friends had a really cool concert in the Lake of the Ozarks. That was fun. I got to film them, kind of like the whole day leading up to it. And that was a really fun concert. It's been on my bucket list to do more concerts and go to see more concerts. I just haven't, with work, I just don't prioritize that as much, and I need to do that. That would probably be my answer, but I definitely want to try and do more. And I've been saying it, but I want to go see more concerts and travel to more places to see concerts.
All right, and getting into number 13, how much do you know about Iran?
I got to say I'm pretty ignorant on my like history, understanding, knowledge about Iran. I'm just not like the most familiar with the place. I kind of get sucked in my own world in terms of, what I do on a day-to-day basis. So I don't really pay attention too much to a lot of outside forces, but, I know generally where the region is. I know some history about it, but nothing very specific.
And lastly, number 14, what do you love most about the United States of America?
It's a really interesting thought to reflect on this specific thing and think about, what I like most about the United States. And, because I think that there's a lot of a lot of people will take this for granted, or like I even do. And, we just get so caught up in like day-to-day work and the grind and the rat race that, you kind of forget to think about, like what we're able to do here or the freedoms that we have. And I think what I love most is that, I'm able to express myself. I'm able to wake up and be whoever I would like to be, to pursue, the things that I want to do without persecution. I'm just thankful that, I'm allowed to believe the things that I want to believe and, follow the things that I want to follow without the fear of persecution or, or harm, and in some of these other places, like that's a real concern, or, censorship, or I don't know. There's just a lot of other things that countries have to deal with, and the rights of the people, are kind of misconstrued. And, in the place that we live in the United States, we have these different freedoms, and, without getting into too much, I'm just very blessed and thankful for the opportunities that I have and the freedoms that I have in the United States of America.
Point approved.
Nima, thank you for having me on this podcast. I can't thank you enough for the opportunity and giving me the platform to be able to speak and give my thoughts. And, I'm very honored that, I'm even selected to be on this podcast and get to talk to you. I appreciate the opportunity. I look forward to talking to you in the future, and I appreciate what you do for the sport.
Game time finished. Game stopped.